Good morning, everyone. Warm welcome from the International Forum for Environment, Sustainability and Technology. We just got to know that there is some traffic detour that is happening, so we hope people can join in on time for the opening session. Um, Before we start the inaugural session, I would like to really apologize for a little delay today. So, iForest, today we are convening this national e-conference on just transition in automobile sector, which essentially builds on our work of two programs. One is our just transition program and also our urban transition program. iForest has been engaging on the issue of just transition from the perspective of enabling opportunities of green growth and green jobs as we strengthen our commitments to our climate action. Our engagement on just transition in India's automobile sector also stems from the same. The shift from global, internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles represents a watershed moment in the automobile sector in terms of technological advancements. But at the same time, it offers unique opportunities to advance our environmental stewardship, create new avenues for economic growth, create jobs, and overall improve livability of our urban spaces. Therefore, ensuring a just transition of the automobile sector will be to build on all of these opportunities through the right policies, plans, and investments. Throughout this day, today, in this conference, we will engage in insightful discussions and explore innovative solutions to navigate the complexities of this transition. With representation from the Government of India, the industry, various skill development agencies, eminent experts, among others, we really look forward to a vibrant discussion in all our sessions. With that, I would now like to introduce our guests. Actually, they're already on the podium to inaugurate the event. Mr. Amitav Kant, G20 Sherpa. We all know Mr. Kant has been a great proponent of EV, and the first picture I remember his Twitter post when we purchased an electric vehicle. So he has been a great champion of this clean mobility transition, and we are honored to have Mr. Amitav Kant with us as our eminent chief guest. Welcome, sir. Dr. Hanif Qureshi, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Heavy Industries, Government of India, is a special guest today, and very welcome, Mr. Qureshi. My colleagues, Dr. Chandrabhushan, who is the President and CEO of iForest, will be delivering the opening address today, and my colleague, Atika Wadhwa, who is heading our urban transition program, will present a briefing of our findings as we release the compendium of studies that we have done over the last 1 year. Thank you, everyone. And with that, I hand over the floor to Chandrabhushan. Welcome.
Good morning. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Kant, Mr. Qureshi, my colleague Atika and Shrestha on the dais. People here, you are very welcome to this important meeting. We think the research that we are publishing today, releasing today, will have implications for the growth and development of the auto industry. This is a very important report. Year-long research has gone into bringing out this report. And I'm hopeful that this research report will ignite and lead to further understanding, better understanding of what this electric vehicle transition means for this country. Let me start by saying that any discussion on automobile sector must necessarily start with discussion on climate crisis. Last year was the hottest year on record. January was hottest on record, and February is hottest on record. March is likely not to be because El Nino is a weakening. But overall, there is no question in the minds of people across the world that we are in a crisis situation as far as climatic impact is concerned. Now, controlling this climatic impact will be the biggest transformation in economic history of the world. I very seriously believe that the transition that we will see, if we really want to control temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius, will be similar to, akin to, the advent of Industrial Revolution. Everything we have learned in the past 300 years to manufacture product, to generate energy, to consume product, will have to change if we really want to solve climate crisis. As far as mobility sector is concerned, this disruption is similar to when Model T came in the market, exactly 110, 120 years back, which basically changed everything in the mobility sector. We are at the same juncture as far as automobile sector is concerned. And to understand this transformation, if you can start the presentation, please. Yeah. To understand this transition, this entire year-long study was undertaken by iForest. Let me give you the scope of the study, because we are very proud of what we have done. Our first step was to do impact assessment. And we did impact assessment on two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and four-wheeler as far as parts and components were concerned. My colleagues counted each and every part of a three-wheeler, ICE vehicle, internal combustion vehicle, compared it to the similar electric vehicle to understand which part will remain, which part will go, and which can be repurposed. Just to give you a flavor of what we found, in case of two-wheeler, we found that excluding nuts and bolts and washers, there are 343 unique parts in a two-wheeler. Internal combustion two-wheeler, whereas it is about 280 and in an EV two-wheeler. So about 208 parts in an internal combustion two-wheeler is going to become obsolete, whereas 135 can be reused. Now, such detailed study was done by iForest on two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and passenger cars to understand how parts and components, and therefore auto component industry, will change. We went a step ahead to actually understand the product portfolio of auto component manufacturers. And we took all the members of ACMA and studied them in detail. We could have verifiable information of about 729 ACMA members out of 820, 830 odd members. And we have analyzed how this transition is going to impact their product portfolio. Then we went to clusters, because ACMA members are generally medium and large scale enterprises. So we did primary survey of Pune cluster, one of the biggest automobile cluster in India. We went to Hosur in Tamil Nadu and Gurugram in Haryana to understand the impact of this transition on MSMEs. And lastly, we did primary survey of 300 enterprises and about 1,200 workers to understand the impact on job roles and on jobs. When we had all these information, then we went into modeling and projections. And we are going to present to you our results on how the vehicle as well as EV penetration is going to happen in this country over the next 12, 15 years. We have done it for all vehicle segment. And we have done study on passenger car segment as far as jobs are concerned. Ultimately, we are going to publish 6 separate reports today. And we are calling it as Compendium of Studies. The first 3 reports is looking at the technology, parts and components of two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and passenger cars. We are releasing our report on impact on auto component manufacturers, on clusters, and on workers. So there are 6 separate reports that we are publishing. Now, what is the big picture that is coming out of our study? There are 3 simultaneous transformations that we can clearly see happening in the entire mobility sector. The first is driven by technology and regulatory changes, especially from environmental perspective, which is driving EV. Whether it is meeting the climate goal, reducing pollution, EV is coming out as the big solution. So the transition to EV is now being driven by technological feasibility and regulatory changes. This is the first transformation that we can see. Second is happening in the realms of mobility itself. Now, mobility revolution is happening because of digitization and electrification together, which means that the traditional model of automobile business, whether it is in terms of use and ownership of vehicle or the production of vehicle itself, is going to change. In fact, we can clearly see the business model changing from automobile as a product to mobility as a service. This is the second transformation that is happening. And third, electrification, digitization, and automation is changing the entire work environment in automobile sector. In any case, our assessment is that auto sector workers are skilled, much more skilled and educated compared to other sectors that we have studied so far. But this entire ecosystem of work and jobs are going to change because of combination of all three: automation, digitization, and electrification. Now, this can be a creative disruption or this can be a pure disruption, depending on how we handle these three transformations. We are frankly only looking at the first transformation, which is transition to EVs. And we are promoting EV. But there are two simultaneous transitions that is also happening. And in this sense, in taking all these three transformations together, we have to understand what just transition will mean for the automobile sector. Let me first say that just transition in the automobile sector is not about protecting business or jobs of internal combustion engine. Just transition is being used by a lot of scholars as a protectionist principle. It is not. For us, just transition in automobile sector will mean transitioning businesses, supporting and transitioning businesses, clusters, and workforce to clean vehicle and mobility. B, just transition is not about producing more and more vehicle for growth and jobs. The growth in personal vehicle, even if electric, will create challenges for the environment. Whether it is extraction of resources to get critical minerals or metals, which can be extremely polluting, or for cities where personal vehicle can overwhelm a city with congestion, infrastructure investment, and create livability issues. And therefore, for us, just transition is about promoting sustainable mobility choices. So these are the two very clear outcomes that comes out of our research. Let's discuss about how we transition and support this transition process for businesses, clusters, and workforce. And second, how do we promote sustainable mobility choices rather than only electric vehicles? And therefore, we have come out with 4 very clear pillars of just transition in automobile sector. In fact, I, in the morning, was discussing with Mr. Qureshi that technology advancement has to be one of the core of transition in the automobile sector. Technology and skilling is the first pillar, where we are talking about how do we strengthen research and development of cutting-edge technology in India itself. But the technology development, technology implementation must happen side by side with human resource development, both to get right kind of human resources, but also technology implementation should happen in such a way that it is not leading to large-scale job loss. So the first pillar is technology and skilling. Second is green manufacturing, where India must remain a major manufacturing hub of automobile sector, both for the domestic market as well as for export. But this manufacturing must transition to green manufacturing. We must beat Europeans in their own game. And therefore, this manufacturing cannot be as it is right now. It must move to green manufacturing. The third is sustainable mobility choices, where the transition that is already happening in the business model in automobile ownership and uses must be supported further. And lastly, is about circularity, is about green energy, is about how do we ensure that we are able to create a circular economy in the automobile sector. So unlike our work in coal sector and thermal power plant, where our focus was largely on workers and local economy, we think automobile sector transition is much more than that. It is about workers. It is about skilling. It is about local economy. But it is also about sustainable mobility choices. It is also about environment. It is also about material circularity. Thank you very much, and I hope you all will enjoy reading this report.
So now we'll release all the 6 reports plus the cover report, which details out all the assessments. As we gather, I would also like to announce that there's a QR code, and the reports are already available for download from the website at iForest. You can go there, visit our website, and download the report. Thank you. Now I would request my colleague Atika Wadhwa, the Director of Urban Transition Program at iForest, to present the key findings of the report. Atika.
Thank you, Shrestha. Chandra in the morning has briefed us about the context and given the scope of the work and the big picture. Let me jump right into the findings of our year-long research to understand and assess the impact of transition from ICE to EV on India's automobile industry. I've split the presentation in about 4 sections, and let me begin with the EV revolution. Our modeling projections show that under various policy scenarios, India is poised to have a massive EV penetration in the total vehicle manufacturing in the next 10 to 12 years. We've considered 2 scenarios, current policy and aspirational policy scenario, based on how ambitious the government programs are, impact of PLI, FAME 2, rollout of FAME 3, when will we achieve the cost parity between ICE and EV, and the different GDP growth. We expect that the total vehicle production will double up by 2030 and triple by 2036. It is going to reach about 77 million units from the current numbers of 26 million units. The growth during this period will hover around somewhere between 6 and 10%. However, if we look at the EV growth, that is going to be increasing at a rapid acceleration. It will see higher growth rates of around 38 to 42% by 2030, and it will slow down to 15 to 16% by 2036. Now, this is going to definitely have an impact in high EV penetration, which we believe can reach 29 to 38% in 2030 and can jump up to 47 to 67% under 2 different scenarios by 2036. If we dig deeper and look at the vehicle segments, the penetration will be highest in 3-wheelers and 2-wheelers. According to the current statistics, EV penetration in 3-wheelers is already more than 50%, and I think you can vouch for it, Ms. Kausalya. And it is likely to reach 90% by 2030 and further to almost 100% in the second period of 2036. Overall, the production in 3-wheeler is expected to grow at a rate of 7% till 2030 and moderate at around 5% by 2036. Similarly, if we go to the two-wheeler segment, adoption rates are forecasted to range from 30 to 40% and then jump up to 50 to 70% by 2036. On the other hand, if we look at the penetration in the EV passenger car, that will be more gradual and stagnant. Overall, if we look at the, as depicted in the graph here, EV market will be dominated by two-wheelers. In 2030 and as well as 2036, it will have a share of around 81%, while the proportion of passenger car will jump to about 10% by 2036. Moving on to next slide. As seen in the previous one, the high penetration of EV in three-wheeler is because of the lower total cost of ownership. This is also because the powertrain cost of three-wheeler is lower than its ICE counterpart. But if we look at the passenger cars, the powertrain of an EV car is roughly 20% more expensive, and primarily it's driven by the high battery cost. If we keep aside the cost of the battery, the powertrain of EV car can cost almost half as compared to the ICE counterpart. Therefore, the reduction in battery, reduction in electronic cost is crucial for decreasing the total cost of ownership of electric cars, and that is going to drive the adoption in future. Let me move on to share with you the findings from what were the different impact on businesses. The surge in EV is poised to transform the automobile industry, we all know, and it will have a significant impact, as Chandra also said, on the demand of parts and components. As the demand for EV rises, traditional auto component manufacturers, ACMs, are going to face a dual challenge of adopting to one, the evolving technology, and two, to meet the changing demands of the market. While there is going to be a greater need for components specific to electric vehicles, the demand for conventional parts may decline. In a two-wheeler and a three-wheeler specifically, the electric vehicle require fewer parts than the ICE counterpart. Overall, through our research, we have observed that about 45 to 85% of the parts of an ICE vehicle will become obsolete. The obsolescence is higher in case of a three-wheeler, which will be as high as 84%, whereas in a passenger car, it's about 45%. The fundamental difference, as we all know, between ICE and EV is the powertrain. So we observe that this transition is going to make about 90 to 100% of the powertrain components almost obsolete. The non-powertrain parts of ICE vehicle will have a moderate to low impact, and that is primarily because some of them can be repurposed to be used and fitted into electric vehicle. As this demand changes for parts, components of ICE vehicle, there will be a significant impact on the businesses of ACMs. There will be fewer suppliers in terms of parts, and there would also be impact on the spare parts in the aftermarket. To understand this, we conducted a pan-India study of 729 ACMA members, ACMA, the Auto Component Manufacturers Association of India, and they claim that their members account for 85% of the auto component industry revenue in the organized sector. Our findings show that 1/3 of the ACMs will be highly impacted by this transition, and around 60% will be of those highly impacted will be concentrated in these three states, which is Haryana, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu. This impact will be more pronounced in the powertrain subassemblies, which includes components in the engine subassembly, fuel, exhaust, transmission, and driveline. The assessment of large enterprises required a comprehensive blend of secondary research and methodological development of impact score. However, it was important to understand and get a grasp of the on-ground realities. And hence, a primary survey was conducted in 3 important automotive clusters alongside assessments of the government and the industry data. Now, why clusters? Because automobile production in India is concentrated in these regions due to either favorable environment, favorable policy structure, overall access to market, good infrastructure, and availability of the skilled labor. The regions commonly known as industrial auto clusters are located at various parts. We considered 3, Gurugram, Pune, and Hosur. Besides giving a regional representation, these clusters actually exhibit diversity in terms of the scope of the businesses and in terms of the scale of businesses. In all, we conducted about 300 surveys of ACMs. Our findings show that transition impact on these clusters will vary, and so has to be our transition strategies. A shift toward EV will affect each cluster in a unique way. For example, looking at the Gurugram cluster, we found out that 40% of the businesses are going to have high to moderate impact, and most of these will be large and medium enterprises. In contrast, when we looked at the Hosur and Pune clusters, about 20 to 25% of the enterprises are going to be impacted, which are predominantly small and micro enterprises. As a result, the strategy transitioning to EV will have to be tailor-made, considering that the profiles and the scales are different. We've also observed that ACMs in almost all the areas have started transitioning to EV-related components. Most of them are making logical transition. They are expanding their businesses by supplying parts and sub-assemblies to EVs. And a small portion is also able to make opportunistic interventions because of the financial strength and R&D capability at their end. Moving on to what has been the impact on the workforce. We surveyed around 300 ACMs and also covered around 1,200 workers to understand the implication on the large amount of workforce that is involved in this area. Further digital transformation, as mentioned in the industry, is also requiring a set of new skills. Our research shows that around 66 job roles will become obsolete. However, 92 new job roles will get created due to EVs. Net-net, the number of job roles in EV ecosystem is actually higher by 5% than the ICE ecosystem. So the overall impact of transition on the number of job roles will be positive. To understand the impact on the number of jobs, a case of passenger car was studied in detail. Job factors were developed at the OEM and ACM level. It was observed that job factor in EV car is lower than the ICE car. Our modeling projections also show that the number of jobs in passenger car manufacturing alone is going to grow from 1.7 billion currently to around 3.5 million by 2036. Therefore, per se, there is no job loss due to the transition from ICE to EV. While the number of jobs supported by EVs are slightly lower than ICE, there will be a net increase in the number of jobs in the automobile sector due to the higher penetration of EV that I discussed in the earlier slides. As the job roles changes, the new job roles that will be in demand will be very qualitatively different from the existing job roles. They will require different skill set, different education level. Our research also shows that almost 2/3 of auto sector workforce currently falls under the NSQF level of 5, 4, and 5, which ideally most of them are graduates, and some of them also have education from Polytech institutes and ITIs. The new job roles that are expected to be created would be in the level 5 and 6, which definitely requires higher skill and level of education. The last section of my presentation is some of the recommendations. The government at the center and at the state level has developed and implemented many policies, plans, schemes in the past many years for adoption of EVs, to offer a support infrastructure to boost domestic manufacturing. However, when we see the policy architecture, it has to be more comprehensive and more integrated to support a sustainable, just, and inclusive transition of automobile sector. Considering the prospective impact on businesses, impact on jobs, impact on the environment, our study proposes a comprehensive just transition plan policy framework for the sector, highlighting 12 key policy aspects. Most of them are listed here, all of them are listed here, but I would particularly want to emphasize on 2 aspects. I believe that technology advancements and human capital must progress together, and hence it's mandatory that there is a development of workforce transition plan at the enterprise level to understand the transition support required and take the necessary action. 2, since the production is based at the cluster level, local economies thrive on the industrial and auto clusters. So it is not a transition in isolation. Interventions to reduce the vulnerability of some of the enterprises, especially MSME, are needed. And this time is ripe for this transition. With that, I'll close this presentation. Thank you so very much.
Before I invite our guests to deliver the addresses, I would like to actually thank my colleagues who has contributed to this report, besides Chandrabhushan, me, and Atika being on the stage. And I would like to request them to stand up in their respective positions. Dr. Harshil Sharma, um, Rohit Bagel. I saw Rohit running around at that time. Saket Singh. I think he's still busy. And Uttam Sharma. We thank them all very much. Without their support, this research would have been never possible. Thank you very much. With that, I would now request Dr. Hanif Qureshi, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Heavy Industries, Government of India, to please deliver the keynote address. Welcome, sir.
Respected Amitabh Kant sir, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to you. I must say that the presence of Amitabh sir here is a great motivator, as we have seen sir's work during the G20 presidency, what India's position was showcased to the world, and the sir's belief in the India's strength. One of the programs which sir started was the aspirational districts program, where the most backward districts of the country were identified and what should be done in those districts. And then sir has written a number of books, one of which is the Incredible India. So all that pointing to the strength and the belief in India's capability. And I think that is the kind of feeling which drives all of us forward, whether we are in the government or in the industry. All of us have to work together. Before the program, I was asking Chandrabhushan that what does iForest do? So he told me that it is a knowledge organization. And very happy to see that the young researchers who have actually gone to the field and talked to people, looked at companies, and come out with really a quantitative report with all these numbers you have given. This requires work, and one of the challenges we face in the government is the lack of data. So all policies have to be based on data, and once we have the information, that drives good decision making. So it is very heartening that not one but 6 reports, you have come out with 6 reports. I think you should continue this good work. This will inform not only the government but also the larger society. A lot of people are working in this space. So I must compliment iForest for this. As far as the automobile industry is concerned, you would know that it contributes about 7.1% of the national GDP. It's a very big part of it. It is now $151 billion size. And the employment potential, direct and indirect, all is about 1.9 crores. So it affects a large part of the Indian economy. And the Viksit Bharat vision, which our Honorable Prime Minister has stated for 2047, that depends to a large extent on the growth of the Indian economy, of which automobiles is an important part. And that growth is not just a simple growth, it is a sustainable growth, it is a green growth, it is a clean growth. And the automobile industry, as you would know, it is transitioning, and we briefly talked about it, that not only EVs, but also other sustainable fuels. Government has a big program on ethanol blending, where we expect that 20% blending should happen by 1st April 2025. And also the National Green Hydrogen Mission, where at least in the beginning, we would have hydrogen powering the heavy vehicles and also trains. Indian Railways is also working on hydrogen-based projects. So the mobility and the transportation will necessarily be driven by clean fuels and sustainable fuels. And that is why our ministry particularly has launched 3 schemes. When Sir was in Niti Aayog, so Niti Aayog is the architect of the schemes, which is the PLI automobile scheme, which is a 26,000 crore rupees scheme, which incentivizes electric vehicles and also advanced automotive components. Not only electric vehicles, but lot of components which go into making of cars, only the advanced components, for example, the ADAS, for example, the hydrogen components which will be used in future vehicles. Out of the 103 components which are incentivized, there are about 11 or 12 hydrogen sensors and these kind of components. The growth in the automobiles will be dependent upon technology. What the consumers want, what the customers want is better technology at lower costs. And that is where the industry will be headed. And as rightly pointed out, that research and development is one of the areas which will drive our industry. As you would know that in the automotive value chain, about 60 to 70% of the value comes from ERD, engineering, research and design. 10 to 15% comes from manufacturing, and 10 to 15 is in the marketing and after sales. Huge part of the value chain lies in engineering, research and design. And that is also the place where most jobs are created. So how this capability can be increased within our country, that is a question we all must think about. And the other important point which Chandrabhushan ji pointed out, and it came out in the report, as Atika said, was about batteries. So PLI, Advanced Chemistry Cell Scheme of the Government of India, which incentivizes 50 gigawatts of battery manufacturing within the country. Industry reports tell us that 50 gigawatt is what the government would incentivize, but another 60 to 70 gigawatt will be put up outside this government help by private players. So we can expect about 110, 120 gigawatts of battery capacity in the next couple of years. And this will certainly, to an extent, address the issue of the importance of the battery. We know that 40 to 50% cost of electric vehicle comes from the batteries. And batteries, you see number of new technologies which are coming up in batteries. Not only lithium, but sodium-based, aluminium air-based, solid state, a lot of work is happening there. Even though predominantly most EV makers continue to use lithium batteries, whether it is NMC or LFP, but on the horizon we see a large number of technologies. And it depends upon, one is research, other is the commercialization of the research. So once that happens, only then these technologies will come in the mainstream. So that again is a technology intensive area. So we are here to listen to sir, and I would stop here. But before ending, I would again congratulate iForest for doing this excellent research, and I look forward to reading your reports. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Qureshi, for your kind words, and it's always an inspiration. Now I would like to please welcome Mr. Amitav Kant, G20 Sherpa, and we all know, Dr. Qureshi has already said that we are looking forward to hear Mr. Kant. Thank you.
Dr. Hanif Qureshi, Mr. Chandra Bhushan, Atika, Shrestha, all the distinguished guests here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me at the outset compliment iForest team led by Mr. Chandra Bhushan for releasing a research report on this transition from ICE to EV and making a very detailed impact assessment on what it would entail. This is critical because, to my mind, this transition is inevitable. This transition is underway and it will happen in a very, very big way in the coming years. And if India does not accelerate the pace of this transition, we will lose our leadership position because, as Mr. Hanif Qureshi said, this contributes about 7.1% of our total GDP. It's a very big employment creator. And in several of these sectors, particularly two-wheelers, three-wheelers. We are global champions. And if we do not transit towards EV vehicles, we'll lose this leadership position and our existing jobs will be in jeopardy. This is important because if you look at the global paradigm, we are still lagging behind. If in the last quarter of 2023, there were 5 million electric vehicles were sold globally. China led the market for electric vehicles with 60% share, followed by Europe with 25%, US with 10%, and India is still languishing at 1% of the global market share. This is the latest data given by IEA. So it's also important to understand that a company like BYD today controls about 18% of the global market for four-wheelers, whereas Tesla holds only 12%, whereas Tesla is much more talked about, but BYD is about 18%, and CATL, one company of China, today controls about 80% of the battery market. Now, if you look at various studies by both IEA and IRENA, the transport sector is actually a very major contributor to CO2 emissions, and it is the largest source of black carbon. Therefore, decarbonizing the transport sector, which actually accounts for about 37% of the carbon dioxide emissions globally, will be critical, and there will be a huge pressure on the transport sector to avoid catastrophic climate change. And if you look at India, the total number of vehicles in India in 2022 stood at about 28.37 crores, while the EV percentage of total vehicles stood at just about 0.21%. And the EV four-wheelers account for only about 0.08% in 2023. And electric vehicles account for only 5% of total sales. So I really feel that there has to be greater ambition for India, and all the ministries in Government of India really need to accelerate the pace of this, because if we do not do this, this market globally will be taken over by China. If we do not do this, other countries will step in. We'll lose leadership position in manufacturing. And therefore, the EV market in India is presently at about 5.61 billion, and is projected to reach 50 billion by 2030. It reflects growing optimism for the sector, as India has set a very ambitious goal for EV adoption. But to accelerate this progress, there is a need to develop an overarching strategy for road transport that can help accelerate the EV transition. And this would require very strong policy support. This would require effective implementation. So my view on this is that there are various opportunities. If you look at startups and innovation, the India EV sector has been quite a hotbed of innovation. Startups are working on electric two-wheelers, three-wheelers, battery manufacturing, recycling, circular economy. If you look at companies like Ather, if you look at Ola, if you look at Chakra Innovation, if you look at Atero, they have capitalized on the growing demand for cleaner transportation options. There is a huge potential for developing low-cost financing solutions for electric vehicles. Mobilizing low-cost capital from about 20 to 25% interest rate to about 10% towards EV assets and infrastructure is critical for higher EV adoption. Inclusion of EVs under priority sector, to my mind, is critical, and this would help us. We also need to create risk-sharing instruments by multilateral financial institutions work. We need to work with World Bank, ADB, and AIIB, which should provide capital to create risk-sharing facilities that offer loan risk reserves or loan guarantees to banks and NBFCs to cover possible losses when financing electric vehicles, because there's no resale market of electric vehicles. We have to build that market. That's important. And then there is the issue of charging infrastructure. We need at least 1 million fast chargers in the country to adopt electric vehicles by 2030. Instead of importing, which is what is happening, we need to push localization content in manufacturing with megawatt hour charging. Tesla has opened its charging IP for buses and commercial vehicles. And there are a range of startups like Cosm, Exponent, EdgeGrid, MO Energy, who will all play a very pivotal role in this in the coming years. Then there is a need to accelerate the electrification of public transportation. And I am a great believer in this, that public transportation needs to be pushed. When I was in Niti Aayog, we pushed for 5,500 buses by consolidating the order. The Ministry of Heavy Industry is now consolidating another 10,000. We proved that actually on an OPEX basis, the cost of an electric vehicle will be about 10 to 12% cheaper than a combustion vehicle if we are able to consolidate orders. Now, Ministry of Urban Affairs is consolidating 10,000 e-buses with an outlay of rupees 20,000 under the Mahua scheme. And there is a clear need to mandate the replacement of diesel buses by e-buses across all cities of India, especially in low emission zone areas, as transport electrification, to my mind, is the way forward. There is also a need to promote zero emission delivery services, where there is a separate Shunya campaign which is run by private sector through initiative, and transitioning to zero emission delivery fleets shall be important component of the service delivery. Companies like Zomato, Swiggy, Zepto, Amazon, all should go 100% electric. This will ensure economic benefits to local businesses and the delivery consumers. I would also say that there is a need for advanced chemistry cell battery storage is critical, as worldwide, if you look at the worldwide, the capacity has already surpassed 1200 gigawatt hour. China is 77% with about 893 gigawatt hour, followed by European Union, which has 14% at 150 gigawatt hour. India has actually right now 0%. And only 30 gigawatt hour out of 50 gigawatt hour, we had allocated 50 gigawatt hour under the battery storage scheme. Only 30 gigawatt hour has been allocated under PLI, which also so that we can have localization of battery manufacturing. This needs to be pushed. This needs to be pushed in a very big way, and we need to develop the battery value chain ecosystem in India. Because this, to my mind, will be really critical in the coming years. We also need to develop battery swapping networks, because Niti Aayog had introduced the draft battery swapping policy in April 22 to strengthen the ecosystem. This needs to be strengthened. This needs to be pushed forward for two-wheelers and three-wheelers. And then there is a challenge of repurposing and recycling of batteries. Lithium-based batteries need a disposal policy. We need to repurpose and recycle them on giga scale. And private players, many of them like Athro and Loham, are doing a great work, but private players need to be pushed harder to set up battery recycling and collection infrastructure with future buyback options for end consumers. And then there is a key issue of skill development, because supporting programs to train a skilled workforce for the EV industry from manufacturing to maintenance and repair is critical. We need an army of engineers, and it is imperative to collaborate with polytechnics, triple IIT to train the workforce, which can operate charging stations and also provide robust and reliable after-sale service to electric vehicles. And the last point I want to make is about research and development, because encouraging collaboration between academia, government, and the private sector to foster innovation and drive the growth of the EV ecosystem is critical. For instance, we need a development, we need huge centers of excellence at IITs and IIM, which will lead research in electric vehicles if India is to become a global champion. And therefore, my view is that promoting EVs in India is not just about cleaner air and a greener planet. It's also about economic growth. It's also about technological advancement. It's about creating a brighter future for future generations. And embracing electric mobility will only lead to a more sustainable and more prosperous India. So today's study on opportunities and the roadmap for just transition in India's automobile sector is a very critical, it's a very major study, it's a very prominent study. It should be, this study should be made accessible to all private sector enterprises to show the road ahead, because my view is that this transition is inevitable, and this transition, India should take the leadership position and accelerate the pace of it before other countries capture this entire automobile market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kant. I mean, I think Mr. Kant has set the stage for everything we wanted to discuss today, and will be discussing in the coming, years, I believe. From touching on technology, the importance of financing, access of risk capital, public transport, R&D investments, everything. And some of these we touch based in our propositions of the policy framework that we have proposed at the end of the report. But of course, there is much more work to be done in all these respects, and government and industry needs together to develop the policies, plans, and necessary investment ecosystem to take this forward. With that, I would like to conclude the inaugural session, and we'll break for tea for some time. But if we can leave about 5 minutes for any questions that is related to the topic of discussions today, and we'll break for tea so anyone for that matter? Okay, we'll conclude. Okay, then we conclude this session, and we gather back after tea. Thank you.